Okay. Keep them coming. Clarity, empowerment. Okay. Okay, is that enough for you guys to start with?
Perfect, Jim. Thank you.
Brilliant. So look, thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. So firstly, welcome to the inaugural Coaching in the Workplace Community of Practice. Very glad you could be here today. We've got a special day for you. I just want to sort of set the scene for what's to come over the next sort of hour and a half. We just had a little bit of time settling in, but we're going to sort of do a quick little welcome and run you through the agenda. Then we're going to have a little pre-keynote activity, which we'll do before sort of the keynote starts. And then our guest speakers will come on and do their sharing. That'll be the keynote. And after the keynote, we're going to have some breakouts, some questions that have been answered, and a bit more sharing before summaries and closing. But what I want to do to start with, I want to sort of talk about, what is a community of practice, or why a community of practice? So just so you understand the reason why we're here, over the years, we've sort of, Lynn and myself from CCI and from North Point, we've worked with lots and lots of HR leaders around the world. And a lot of leaders sort of constantly talk to us about coaching or coaching in the workplace. And the thing that we've realized is that everyone's got very different opinions on what coaching is. Everyone's got very different opinions on what coaching in their workplace looks like or what they'd like it to look like. Everyone's got different challenges around embedding coaching in the workplace. And a lot of sort of HR leaders are constantly asking us about, okay, so how do we actually build this thing called a coaching culture? We hear about certain organizations that have a coaching culture, but we don't actually know how to do it. Or how do we get senior leaders to buy in? So the thought behind this was we wanted to build a community where people like you could come together, could share, could learn from one another, really a platform for you to be able to learn about coaching in the workplace from one another and really sort of foster the whole coaching in the workplace sort of movement in organizations, okay? So how can you get involved? Various ways. Join in the conversation. We will be starting up a LinkedIn group, a special community group for sort of HR leaders. So you can get involved, you can join in the conversation, you can ask questions, challenge people's thinking, you can share your knowledge and experience like the people from SAP are doing today for us. So it's really about building a community which is driven by the community itself. It's driven by HR leaders like you who really want to get a handle on coaching in the workplace, who really want to build and foster coaching in the workplace. And that's sort of the goal behind the community. So more to come. We're going to reach out to you with links to the community page in time. And we're going to create regular events over the period for you. Okay. Anything you'd like to add to that, Lynn?
No, thank you, Jim, for sharing with us the agenda for tonight. I also want to take the chance to just welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. We have an exciting session, and we're very honored to have guest speakers from SAP. So that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to throw the ball back to you, Jim.
So you're absolutely right. We have gotten a very sort of exciting session because SAP is, in my mind, from my understanding, from the people that I know at SAP, is one of these leading organizations in terms of the way in which they've embraced coaching and culture in the workplace. But what we're going to do is start with, before we sort of kick off with SAP, is we're going to launch a Mentee sort of board for you, which we've just done. So it's all done. We don't need to worry about that anymore. I forgot. On that note, I'm going to hand it over to SAP. Now, can I ask that if you have any questions, post them in the chat box or hold on to them for after the session, or if SAP, if Elke and Akshita, are available, then they'll answer the questions on the fly. Okay. But anything you want to ask, just start with by posting them in the chat box. Let me start by introducing our two guest note speakers. So there's Elke Simon Keller. Elke is the SAP Coach Ambassador. She's a product launch coach, and she's the go-to expert, market expert within SAP. And then lastly is Akshita Shetty, who's a HR director for SAP APJ. She's an Ericsson solution focused coach. These people have a lot of experience. They've been there, they've walked the talk, and they've got a lot to learn. So welcome aboard, guys. Take it away.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Jim, I'm just going to try to share my screen. So,
Okay, I'll just stop share for you.
okay. Let me know if you're able to see the screen. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, perfect. First of all, thank you, Lynn. Thanks, Jin, for having us. I think it's a pleasure for us to share what we are doing in SAP. So we've called it the power of SAP's coaching culture. And along with me, like Jim mentioned, I have Elka, who's going to be my partner in crime today, sharing about what SAP is doing in terms of our coaching journey. So what are we going to quickly cover today? I'll quickly cover and talk about a people strategy, a little bit about the portfolio, the peer learning portfolio. We'll spotlight and zoom in a little bit more into the global coaching program. And then we definitely want to speak about the coach ambassador in Singapore. What you see here, I don't know if you're able to still see my screen well, is the SAP people strategy. So our people strategy is centered around the employee journey and the experience. And the three key themes that you would see is on the below: building the skills of the future, drive SAP's winning culture, change the way we lead. And the way it's tied closely to what you see there as the 7 themes is SAP as an organization wants to attract the best talent, be an employer of choice. And how do we do that? By building the skills of the future, growing talents, and developing the skills of the future. By driving SAP's winning culture, we're also developing the next-gen performance management via performance measures, via the SAP talk conversations that we have. And the most importantly is changing the way we lead, which is via fostering a leadership culture, leading the new behaviors of leadership culture, pursuing an agile entrepreneurial mindset towards the future of work that we have, striving for inclusion and reflecting the diversity of the society so that we could deliver the best to our customers. So our people strategy is centered around these 3 themes and these 7 pillars that we have. If I drill down a little bit deeper into what the leadership behavior means, and this leadership behavior is something that was co-created with the help of 2,000 plus employees across SAP based on the feedback that we have. And this is called the how we run and how we lead behaviors. The how we run is our values, which is embrace differences, keep the promise, not build bridges, not silos, stay curious and tell it like it is. And the leadership principles, which is unlocking potential, where we're saying that leaders nurture an environment where people can learn and grow. And we're talking about exploring possibilities where leaders focus on thinking big, help the employees focusing on thinking big. And the last one is making it happen together, which is leaders inspiring, guiding, executing, clarity on focus. Now, you must be wondering, why is Akshita talking about strategy? Why is Akshita talking about the leadership principles? Do you see coaching in any of the last 2 slides that I've shared? Anything that you've seen resonates or mentions about coaching? Feel free to put in your comments in the chat box as we're speaking, and we can address or answer those questions. But I just wanted to draw your attention and take a pause to understand, is there anything that you mentioned about coaching that you see Rel specifically talking about coaching? Yeah, I see some comments there. Yep. So just to articulate what I just asked, we don't specifically mention coaching anywhere because it's part of our culture. And most of you are veterans, are mostly in HR and L&D, so you know what a culture is. Culture is something which is so embedded in the organization that's almost not seen. And that's what coaching is for us. So if I take an analogy of that, all of you, some of you are growing plants. You've seen how, you grow fruits, you grow plants, you grow flowers. And what we also see is that we just see the results of it, which is the plants, the fruits, the nourishment that it has. But we never see the soil that is in it that helps to nurture the result that we get, which is actually what is the important part of it, the nourishment of the soil. And that's what is the culture. It's so embedded in the organization that it's not almost seen. So that's what coaching is for us. And that's why we don't explicitly call that out in any of our people strategy, because it's an underlying function that we have. Let me dive into a little bit of peer learning portfolio in SAP. And how do we define peer learning? So peer learning is developing through active interactions with others by capitalizing on each other's resources and skills and strengths. Each of you in your respective organizations or as individuals would have a different understanding of peer learning, but the way SAP focuses on peer learning is based on the continuous learning culture philosophy that we have, which is 70% experiences, 20% connections, and 10% education. Each of you would have different aspects of the learning culture, the learning philosophy in your organization, but this is what works for SAP, which is experiences via rotational programs, via assignments, via self-directed experiences, connections via the peer learning, which is primarily, you could say, coaching, mentoring, and education is mostly the classroom, the structured, instruction-led training, and we have the performance support, which is a continuous conversation that we have. And all of these are measured without formal tracking, but it's more measured as a development conversation between the employees, between the managers, and on an ongoing basis. Why is peer learning important for us? Peer learning helps us prepare for the future in the fast-paced environment that we have. It helps us with a clear understanding of your individual skills, which is your strengths, your assessment, where do you want to go in your career. It increases the agility to cope with the change, especially given that we have COVID right now. I think it's even more important to understand how do you deal with change? How do you navigate through this change? We're also constantly talking about future of work, future skills. So this also helps you with the ability to work in dynamic teams. And peer learning is specifically for us helping with the growth mindset culture that we have in SAP. So SAP employees are empowered to cultivate a growth mindset and benefit from personalized connections and experiences. And what we mean by that is we have the SAP coaching program where a coach talks to you. We have the SAP Global Mentoring Program where we have a mentor talking to you, and we have the self-directed opportunities where you could trigger development opportunities based on need base. So it's an on-demand self-service kind of thing based on the request and the demand that you have. If we zoom in a little bit more into what the coaching program is all about, and I think that's exactly the conversation that you would like to hear more about. We do have the SAP coaching program, and for that I would invite Elka to share a little bit into what we do and how do we run it in Singapore.
Thank you, Akshita, and thank you, Jim and Lynn, for having us today. Just a quick check. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So yes, I also would like to invite you, of course, to share your questions in the chat. I'm observing while I'm speaking. So as Akshita mentioned, I mean, I will dive into what the coaching program is all about. However, it's actually interesting to note here as well that this is a community-led engagement or initiative that is kind of like happening in the background. And I think what SAP is striving for and looking to further develop is to make sure that this is actually part of anything that we do at SAP. Yeah, so it's an intrinsic part of the HR strategy. It's an intrinsic part of the business strategy. So if we go back to where it all started, it really was a grassroots approach. Yeah, so it was a bunch of people who gone and became educated coaches. And it, of course, as many things, it happened in the head office. And they started this initiative to get together to create a community, a coaching community, a community that consisted of a bunch of coaches back in 2003. So that's already quite a few years ago. And at the time, it kind of like was embraced by HR as well. And it started to actually grow into a bigger community. So from a very small community into a bigger community, but all based on volunteering hours, volunteering time, and also just through socializing and networking amongst each other. So that's then when it actually in 2010, it became an official program, and it was even more embraced by HR. So HR really, if you just click, yeah, thank you. So HR really has driven that, and it was officially considered as a part of what we do and what we would like to foster as part of the people strategy. But still, it was kind of like happening on the side, and it was not funded well, and it was not something that was really intrinsic, a part of what we do at SAP. So it was only a few years later when it further was actually developed and further manifested that it part of the learning culture. And it came down to one of our leaders who also happened to be a coach, who understood the value of making coaching an intrinsic part of the learning culture, so that he and then also a lady put aside some funding to make sure that it actually will become a structure that people are able to dedicate their time to it and some of the resources. So today, if you go to just click to the next one. Today we have over 600 coaches at SAP, and these are all educated, fully educated, certified coaches by the coaching school. Some of them are accredited by ICF, not all of them. And there is for sure, a network that is globally established. And you can see here the geographical representation. So this global coaching community makes sure that we are balanced in that way. So they do fund additional coaching educations for individuals on a usually like 2 handful basis per year. And also we do work with a vendor, a centralized vendor, to make sure that we are ensuring certain quality of the coaching education and making sure that people who would like to become a coach have a coaching school available. Yeah. So some people fund it themselves, some people get it funded through their manager, some people get it funded through the central coaching fund. So far, we have about 2,500 people that actually are engaged in coaching sessions. Coaching as such is available for everybody and anybody at SAP. So there are tools available to do the matching between the coach and the coachee, where all the coaches are available. And it's just something that is implanted, and I will share a little bit later more information as to how we make it accessible. And it's actually in all sorts of different places around the globe. Yeah, so we have 44 countries where we do offer coaches. And what they do is, these are all employees, just myself. I do have a day job, and Akshita as well. We all have day jobs, and we are signing up as coaches. And with that, we are providing 5 to 10% of our time to coaching itself. So that's part of the agreement. And by having a global network, of course, we make sure that we are able to offer coaching also in all sorts of different local languages on the ground. I mean, pre-pandemic, I think it was even more relevant for people to have face-to-face coaching. So now, of course, everything moves into the virtual world. However, we are kind of like set up in a way so that we can offer this for everybody around the globe within SAP. And if we look at the next one, the next slide, yeah, thank you. So when we look at this, actually, just for a moment, is like, what do we actually do with our coaches and with SAP? So how do we see this right now? So first of all, for coaches, so those who want to embark on this coaching journey, they are on a path of a continuous learning. They are on a continuous learning path as part of that. So we offer to the coaches, and this is all community-led. Yes, this is all based on coaches that are out there. These are voluntary coaches. We have a core coaching team. We have a core team who supports these coaches, who are organizationally part of HR, who are representing the peer learning group. And these are 5 people. So that's what kind of holds this community alive. And they offer, they're facilitating these conversations. And these conversations come up so that we can have peer consulting as coaches, so that we talk to each other as coaches and we consult each other in difficult coaching conversations. We offer supervision internally as well of more senior coaches. I mean, some of our coaches are on the ICF PCC level, so they are more experienced, MCC level as well. And we do actually share experiences. So we bring people together so that they can share their experience as a coach. And then we also offer mentor coaching to continuously improve, or to allow people to improve their coaching skills. What we actually just last year or 2 years ago, we formed is the so-called ambassador network. So as such, making sure that globally we have a certain quality, and we maintain quality, local reach, and also making sure that we are balanced. We established a coaching ambassador network. And I'm the representative for Singapore, so that's why I get the pleasure to be invited here to represent SAP tonight. And what they do is really to build the network, even to make sure it's closer connected, that there's collaboration across. So if there's anything exciting going on in North America for coaches, through the network, through the ambassador network, it becomes available globally. Yeah. So there's a monthly meeting as the ambassadors, and we're making sure that the funding is also shared, that that everybody is able to participate, and that we have continuously upskilling, so that we have a representative who is the ambassador, who's looking after each coaches locally. If there is a new coach coming on board, making sure that he feels welcomed, that he gets access to the community, and that we also have a touch point here with our local senior management. So coaching is, for example, here in Singapore, where we also have the regional representation of SAP. It's a topic that is very close to our MD. Yeah. So he, as a coach, he's actually mentoring himself. He understands the power of coaching as such. And he's also, of course, as a consequence, is embracing coaching. So whenever there's an opportunity, he promotes coaching as part of whatever he does, so that people reach out to a coach and leverage that whenever there is anything that is a challenge, anything that they would like to change, and so on. So as such, we are also considered as multipliers, so that we make sure that this coaching mindset is further growing. We are sometimes also here available as facilitators. So for example, we have a class that is called Ready for Coachable Moments, that is available for anybody and everybody at SAP. It teaches and drives towards the awareness of what are the coaching principles, what is active listening, and what is a difference between having a coaching conversation and a mentor conversation, or just as a manager. When can you actually leverage coaching as part of your conversation? So it's about identifying this coachable moment, and then being able to really unlock that potential of your employee, of your colleague, and sometimes also of your boss. Yeah. So as such, I think that the SAP coaches are considered as the foundation of making sure that coaching is further embraced. And yes, we would like to foster a coaching culture. I think we are on a good track, but it's interesting because this is a journey that just simply never ends. Yeah. So I see there is actually a question here in the chat. And if I just maybe pick this up for a moment before I maybe drill more into what we do in Singapore. So the question, if I just read this out, how do you measure the application of coaching? So the application of coaching, is there
I think she means the impact of coaching, Elka.
Okay, yes. I mean, we do a lot of surveys with people, with coaches and with coachees. And I think on one slide, we also shared that the net, with regards to the Net Promoter Score. So, I mean, and if you go back to this slide here real quick, Akshita, where we have the numbers. Yeah, this one. So, I mean, yes, the Net Promoter Score is actually what is on the slide here of 90%. So I guess what we are saying here is that at the end of each coaching relationship, there is a survey that we send out that reflects on, okay, what is it that has changed since you embarked on this coaching relationship? Yeah, so that's something that's for sure something that we measure to get the feedback. We also actually look at the quality, such as like, yeah, as I said here, the Net Promoter Score. And we are, I mean, there is a change and there is an improvement to the people in terms of satisfaction when it actually, before, like after coming out of the coaching session. We also do surveys for coaches, like for the coaches itself, like once a year, to see what is it that they have, how they have improved and what they have learned and how they have developed. Yeah. So in terms of, it's always a difficult topic actually looking at impact, yeah, trying to quantify it. But so far, I mean, the coaching pool, the coaching conversations, all of that is going up every year between 10 to 25%, yeah, year over year. So there is an increase of coaching for sure, and the uptake as such. Yeah, that's what I can, what I have here with regards to that. Is there anything, Akshita, from your point of view?
Hi, Elka. I was just typing. It was a little long text, so it's taking a while. There's a different aspect of it. I think I would look at it two levels. One at an individual level, where it was between a coach and a coachee, where you have an agreement and you have set measures and expectation of outcomes of how do you want to get out of the session, right? What are the milestones that you would have? And have you achieved those milestones from time to time as an individual? As an organization, like I said before, because it's integrated into everything that we do, say the leadership programs, the SAP Talk conversation, which is the performance management conversation, the learning culture. So we have measurements on that based on the people survey results, which has specific questions about leadership trust. It has specific questions about employee engagement. We can also measure it via the retention aspect of it. So at an organization-wide, we look at the broader KPIs. At an individualized, we also can look at more individual KPIs of have you achieved those, and is that the success measure that we want to get to? So that's how I would also look at it.
And maybe just to add to this, the coaching relationship is a relationship that sits in full confidence between the coach and the coachee. And it's available to everybody, as I mentioned. There's no manager involved for approval or HR or any of this. And there is an agreement that the coachee signs and the coach to kick off this relationship. And in that, as part of that agreement, it basically just states, first of all, what is coaching? What is it not? And it clarifies as to what is expected from the coachee and from the coach as part of this agreement. And usually it consists of a number of sessions. And then there's a checkpoint after 3 or 6 sessions to see, okay, so let's see where are we right now? Is there any thing else that is still out there to be worked on for coaching from a coachee perspective? And then this is how kind of this coaching relationship gets structured. So maybe that's answers a little bit like the question here as well that Arthur had, because it was about maybe some thoughts that he shared. So thanks for sharing, Arthur. I think what is important here is make sure that to mention here is that this is totally voluntary by the coach and the coachee, and it is facilitated by HR as part of the peer learning strategy and so on, and facilitated, but HR is not really involved.
Okay, one question that Wahed raised was the types of questions you asked for your Net Promoter Score.
Yes, that's a very good question, and I would have to come back to you actually on that. I can share that with you. I can share that with you as to what we put out there.
Do you want me to move further, Elka?
Yeah, we can move to the next slide and then maybe talk a little bit about what we do in Singapore and why we are here. So Singapore is just basically it's a fairly small office, given that we are 100,000 people globally, and in Singapore we are roughly 3,000. We did form this ambassador network, or the coach network in Singapore about 2 years ago, and simply put, to be here for our local employees, to be available. And what we do is we just meet very loosely on a monthly basis for a brainstorming session. So this is also where we live community-led practices. So it's there is no hierarchy. I mean, we brainstorm on a topic. There are people who are raising their hands to go and do something with it. The topics that we usually brainstorm is, okay, I mean, it's all under that umbrella. How can we make sure that people know what coaching is, and how can we further embed it into anything that we do, and how can we make it accessible to our colleagues? I mean, especially now at times of change, where we all in a different environment, it's like, how can you foster that? Yeah, how can you foster what is and embrace the new situation? How can you really make sure that you are balanced? And I mean, all the topics that I guess everybody is talking about. There was, for example, just an email that was sent by our board not long ago, which was called the Pledge to Flex, and it means that we can work from anywhere, whenever we want, sort of thing. Yeah. So whatever works based on the life situation, on the setup. I mean, you are free to choose from where you work. So that was something that, okay, with this now being available, what are the opportunities? Yeah? What are the opportunities to the individuals to make that really work for themselves? What is the flexibility that I have, that I can leverage here to be even more efficient and more effective in what I do, and ultimately more successful? Yeah. But of course, it's also coming closely connected to the employee counseling, for example. So for people in a very difficult situation, while we're also looking at drawing the line between counseling and coaching, but there is kind of like that alignment that, yes, we know from each other, and we know what we can offer, what the counseling team can offer. We also are very closely connected to the employee engagement team. So they, of course, are looking at events to help employees to sometimes also have a bit of fun. Yeah, I mean, especially now, it's also quite a challenge for them to come up with something that is exciting for our colleagues to embrace on. So also here we are looking at how can we actually make coaching a part of. Then there are often leadership programs, development programs, and addressing, for example, young talents. There is a community of young talents at SAP. So it's also about like talking about coaching. What is it that coaching can provide to you? How can it help you to manage your career and to grow at SAP? Yeah, so that's something that we are just bringing into these various communities. And there is another aspect, since there's a global coaching network, it's about bringing these local coaches to that global community as well, and help them to be present, to sometimes also to showcase something that they have worked on or that they would like to bring forward. Yeah, and finally, we, as I mentioned before, it's if there is a local course. So, for example, I'm currently engaged as a facilitator for Ready for Coachable Moments, which I think is a great opportunity for me as an employee, while I do have my day job, to have that flexibility to be also available and to grow as a facilitator and as something that is not really part of my daily job, but something I'm very passionate about. Yeah. So it's the global, making the global network being locally available. I think that's probably what it is for us here in Singapore. And yeah, and at the end of the day, it comes down to making sure that people know that coaches are available, that coaching is there for them to help them in anything related to the career, their skill development, driving a change. Yeah, and as we all, I think, brainstormed in the beginning, unlocking the potential and all of these nice terms that we are looking for our colleagues, our employees to have access to. So just pausing here, looking at the time, and maybe also at the chat.
So if anyone has any questions, please raise them in the chat now or ask them. I've actually got a question for you, Elke. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of it being community-led. To me, that's such an important aspect for sort of building this culture. What's the challenge? I mean, how do you break down the barriers of trust? I mean, at the end of the day, there's always going to be that question in the back of someone's head about how much can I really reveal to my coach in my organization?
So the balance with regards to having this truly community-led and still driving towards a result, is that what you are?
Yeah, so how do you break down that barrier? I mean, there's always going to be that little trust barrier with an internal coach.
Yes.
Right? There's always going to be that question at the back of a coachee's head saying, can I really be honest about how I feel with my manager?
Okay, I see. Okay. So, I mean, I think that this whole topic of confidentiality is stressed in all of it's part of the agreement, it's part of the onboarding conversation. However, SAP is also a big organization. Yeah, so having 100,000 people, and while and all coaches are out there on the coaching database, so people know where I report to, they know which part of the business I am in, and they also know a lot actually about me as to where I've been before and so on. So I guess there is that choice that coaches can take with regards to what the coachee can take with regards to who he wants to have as his coach. Yeah. Still, though, there is a bit. I would say there is a bit of hesitation actually amongst executives to leverage internal coaches for exactly that reason that you mentioned. Yeah. So I would say that maybe on the C level, I'm not sure to what extent they actually rely on internal coaches. I did coach a few of our regional leaders here, one or two, and it came up as an issue. And all what I did is just to emphasize as to, okay, I'm not here with my SAP hat on, I'm here with my coach hat on, yeah, and take it from there. But of course, within a one-on-one relationship, it's that. Otherwise, they would have to go outside and pay for an official, educated external coach. Did that answer your question, Jim, or were you actually?
No, it did indeed. I mean, I like the idea about being able to see where your coach is from, being able to see where they've been. To me, that's very important if I'm looking for someone internally.
Yeah.
Very good. What other questions do people have?
We do have a question from Desmond. Are there any incentives to entice people to become a coach? Is it KPI linked or is it purely up to employees? So I know Akshita has replied that in chat, but is there anything that the both of you want to kind of verbally share?
It's actually totally intrinsically motivated, yeah, and there's no incentive to become a coach. The incentive that there was or there is for some of them is that it's actually paid by SAP as part of their development, development and growth, yeah, as part of their learning. So that could be could be considered as an incentive, but we are not paying people to coach.
Can I ask a question?
Please,
Yes.
Yes, I mean, it's great to see how entrenched the whole program is and how it's continued being developed as you go. But in the beginning, right, you mentioned that you actually partner with a vendor to set it up. Can you just share a bit more of how that started in the early days?
I wasn't part of the early days. Yeah, so I also went through that school, but I wasn't part of the early days. But I think it's like with any centrally funded vendor, if you onboard, it makes you make first of all, you get a better price and you get have a relationship that you can rely on. How it has started, it's a school that is globally available. And that was important that, especially pre-pandemic, where people were sitting in the classroom, that they have courses everywhere around the world. Yeah, but often though, it's actually North American based. Some people, for example, in Germany, they didn't go to that school. They wanted to go to the school that is actually more known in Germany. And as such, we're just basically then negotiating the price as well. The important piece is that it's ICF accredited. That's really what matters. And I find it very refreshing to work with people who are not been through the same school, because they speak a different language and they have a slightly different approach. So I think it's something that we have at SAP, but not everybody has gone through that.
So it's more of a training base rather than like providing external coaches to help supplement the internal coaches.
Yeah, no, it's a school that has it basically trains coaches up to ICF level. Yeah.
A quick question here. This is Mac.
Hey, Mac.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Mac.
This is more a SAP company question in the sense, is this a central budget for this long program? And how does the cost get divided? Does it go into each region, each unit, or is it funded globally?
Mm-hmm. There is a global budget, and that global budget gets split. And 50% of that budget actually is already deducted, because we have some people at SAP who are relying on a sales order. So they have billable hours, for example, our consultants and some of our people in support as well. So if they coach, we basically compensate for that. So that's where 50% already goes. The other 50% is split again to have some globally funded development programs for coaches that is available for all coaches across the globe. And then the rest 50%, which makes it 25%, is then split to all the regions. And then we have to figure out, as the ambassadors, what is it that we're going to do with that? And this is very interesting, because since this is a truly community-led approach and organization, and it's very democratic, and everyone is the same, and nobody is kind of like, and it's the power of the crowd that makes the decision. It's interesting to see that in action. Yeah. And maybe, Tim, that comes a little bit back to your question that you mentioned before, like how do we act as a team? So we are striving for having really this community-led approach. And as such, we also decide as a community how we are spending that money. The good thing is it's not so much, so we don't have to stress over it. But at the end of the day, we want to give everyone a voice.
Hi.
So,
Was your question also if the program is funded?
Yeah, I mean, to me, so you're in APJ, right? So
Yeah.
like, do you have to ensure that there is a continuous budget in APJ for the coaching for your whatever 200 plus coaches you have, or more number coming in? And does it get divided into countries, or it is organized at global level?
yeah, so these coaches in APJ, they can benefit off the global budget and the local budget. So part of it is locally allocated, and they can benefit from that, but they can also benefit from the global budget because it's all available. I mean, whatever we do.
Just to add to what Elka said, to address your previous question, to be a Ericsson certified coach, the ICF coach, yes, that's globally funded. And the way they do it is they request for applications. You have to write a letter of intent. And the way they distribute is to ensure equal distribution across regions, across board areas. So everybody gets an opportunity to be a part of the coaching community, and that is centrally funded.
Thanks, Akshita.
Okay, any other questions?
I'm happy to jump in, Jim. Sorry.
Come on, Matt, go for it.
You guys are way ahead, I mean, it looks pretty solid foundation to me with 600 coaches and many of them are ICF accredited. So like, this is a great way to, successful program, I would say. Now, what is ahead? Like, what is the vision? Like, what is the motivation to go further? And what is that, vision you guys are looking for? What's the best in class going to look like for SAP internally?
I mean, I can maybe start answering, and Akshita, please add to and share from your perspective, especially since it's about the people. I mean, from my point of view, I do believe that coaching is still big time under leveraged, given that we have 100,000 people and we only have 600 coaches. So, I mean, if it's only 5 to 10% of the time, which it is, and it can be, I mean, everybody can decide how much time he wants to spend on this, there should be actually a lot more. And for those people who have gone through the coaching education, I mean, I think that everybody should go through that. Every manager should go through the coaching education, because it gives the space to practice powerful questioning, listening, and I mean, everything that we expect from our managers or anybody who works with other people. Yeah. So I think that's one aspect. So to grow their network. And then the other aspect is to bring, foster more these coachable moments in conversations. Yeah. And to have everything that comes with that. I mean, these principles as to, okay, that everybody has all the resources to come to the best solution himself, that we don't have to tell people all the time what to do, that we are truly listening. And sometimes that's all what is required. I mean, those principles, that those get embraced even more into how we work with each other, how we treat each other. I think there is still quite a way to go in our daily interactions. And that's where I would actually like to draw and to see the vision continuing to emphasize that and to bring it forward.
Thank you.
I don't know if anything, Akshita, from People Strategy, where we are seeing this?
Yeah, I think, Alka, like you said, we're just at the tip of the iceberg, right? There's so much to do, especially given the pandemic, given the future of work conversation that everybody is talking about. It's definitely gaining a lot of momentum, and the need is more. So one of the offerings of coaching that we do, apart from the coaching as well, is, for COVID times, if somebody needed a one-on-one coaching, offering that for employee experiences, for developing. The second one, as an organization, I think we want to move to the cloud journey. We want to transform the leadership team. And for that, I think it's more and more important in terms of how do we bring coaching into a day-to-day practice. The leadership principles, the 3 how we run and lead behaviors that we're talking about, We've just started on the new principles and the unlocking potential, exploring possibility. It's good words, but I think it's about how can they emulate that and live that on a day-to-day basis. And that in turn translate into your sales numbers, because you have sales coaching, and that in turn translates into your future of work, because we're talking about flex work, we're talking about hybrid working. And the way that is working, I don't think all of us have thought about how that's going to play in individual lives. So I think it just becomes more and more effective and impactful. We just need to play it out and see how are we going to roll that out in the context of the new future of work. I think that's going to be important.
Thanks, Akshita. That's very helpful. Can I have a last one more question and then I'll stop?
No, you
Is
can't.
there any data which has been cut to see if there is a participation rate of your executive committee, exco teams, or the top leadership engagement or accreditation in this program?
So there are some leaders who are actually, and this is where the community took off, who have gone through a coaching session themselves, or coaching education themselves, who are also ICF accredited. So they really embarked on the journey and as such took that topic under their arms and said, okay, we need to embrace this. That's one thing. The other thing is that actually SAP, and this is a few years ago, in Singapore, has invested into 20 days of coaching education for the leadership team. So everybody, actually all the senior managers, they have gone through a coaching training themselves. Of course, that helps. Yeah, that helps for people to get to the true essence of what coaching brings.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah. So it seems we have a Mentee screen with more questions. So Lynn, would you like to bring them forward? And there's one, yeah, we had one more slide, but we can get to it. Shall I quickly?
Yeah.
Just, I mean, add. Okay, so the whole point here is that coaching is available to everybody at SAP. Yeah, so you don't have to have permission. You don't have to. The only thing you have to do is you have to find where to go. And here we have two communities, and one is the SAP Global Coaching Community. This is for everybody who's interested in coaching. And here he can get all the things about coaching. What is coaching versus mentoring? Very important for people to understand, obviously not to get confused. Do I need a mentor? Do I need a coach? I mean, both are available and both are being run in parallel. So today I was mainly talking about the coaching community, not the mentoring community, but it's all available to everybody. And then also if you want to become a coach, it's also there. It's that one community. And then we have a closed community, which is only for coaches. And once someone has the education completed and the certificate provided, and then he will be onboarded as a coach. And all those resources are available to those coaches. So I guess the bottom line is having a central place where people can go to find either access to coaching or to find access to, as a coach, to sign up. So I think that's pretty much it. And maybe now we can go to Mentee.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'd like to ask one more question before we jump into Mentee. I mean, you said it's a journey and you're still getting on this journey. You're building this coaching culture. What's been the biggest challenges in terms of getting traction within the organization? Where were the biggest hurdles?
So from my point of view, and I'm sure that there are, I mean, everyone obviously in part of this community coming in with different experience. I think that the biggest challenge is to maintain the momentum and to make sure that coaches have a voice, and not just a bold voice, yeah, just a voice as to when it's needed to be available, and to also find the right access to the people. I think there's one thing that coaches all have in common: they want to help people, yeah. So they want to help people to become even more successful, even more happy. And making this available in a sustainable way, that I think is a true challenge with, of course, the given resources. I think that the global coaching team, which is 5 people, they are struggling all the time with limited resources because it's always about more and faster. That's one thing. The other thing is about that question that also was here, how to make it quantify. How can we measure success? Because people, unless they can measure and they can see the numbers, they don't believe it. And that towards having the conversation with management is tricky. It's not that it's not doable, but it's tricky. So I think also here, it's something that often we have, as long as we have enough people who understand what coaching is and the value of coaching, it's okay. And I think we are on a very good track here, because we do have really many people who do, and many senior managers who also have their own coaches and so on. So, but at the end, it's like, if we're looking at quantifiable numbers, how to measure success or impact, I think that's also a difficult challenge and a difficult conversation to have.
I would just add there, Jim, and going back to one step back, right, to the earlier problem statement of what are some of the challenges for a coaching journey if an organization has not been there. And the biggest thing is making coaching as a standalone function, that, just keeping it as a one-off activity rather than being it embedded into your organization. So the questions you may need to ask is, how is this going to align with the strategy that we're having? Is it going to be integrated into that? How is this tied to the leadership programs that we're doing? How is it tied to the growth mindset or the learning culture? So I think we need to ask the fundamental questions when we started. And I think that's how SAP also started, till they realized that, yes, this is required for the transformation of the organization, transformation of people, transformation of the culture that we wanted to move from an onset mindset to cloud journey, right? So it has to be embedded into different layers of the organization. And of course, to Alka's point, leadership definitely plays a big role in this. And I think, I have a colleague here, Laura, who was also in BTS. When she was in BTS, when we are doing programs with the vendors, we always talk about our behaviors. We also talk about the culture. So it's easier when we work with vendors as well to understand, okay, what are the values that you're living? How do you personalize your programs and coaching and learnings and development based on that? So that's something that would be important for organizations to think about. What does the leadership think about? What does the strategy look like? And how are we going to embed this into a long-term journey rather than just a standalone program?
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So we've got some of the questions on the board. Lynn, can you just scroll up? This was some of the questions that people would like answers to. Let's just see if there's anything that's not covered. How do you differentiate coaching and mentoring? I noticed you said you had different pillars, coaching and mentoring. Can you sort of elaborate a little bit on that, Elke?
Yeah, just maybe in 2 sentences, the difference as we describe it at SAP. I think there are a number of similarities, like commonalities across. The difference for mentoring, it's always, okay, I'm looking for someone who has an expertise in a certain area, be it like leadership, hierarchical, like seniority, or a skill itself, and I'm looking for his advice. So it's about that, getting advice, and tapping into the network, into his network. Hence, I'm choosing that person if I want to have that skill, or I want to learn that skill, and I want to tap into his network. If possible, then I would choose someone as my mentor. And of course, all the questions that are being asked along a mentoring conversation to further analyze are also valid. But a coach has no clue about, as we know, right, has no clue about necessarily the field of expertise. Somebody who's just simply asking questions and listening to what is relevant and never giving advice.
So there's a great question on the board. Culture, inclusion, and diversity are extremely broad concepts. How do you use coaching to develop awareness and mindset so people can champion these and bring out change? Now, I know this is an important topic to SAP. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question.
Akshita, would you like to take this one?
I'm just thinking about the question first. Interesting question, but I don't have what do you call? How do you break that into culture, inclusion, diversity, broad concepts? How do you use coaching to develop awareness and mindset so people can champion this and bring about a change?
Can someone maybe elaborate on this one?
Yeah.
Question.
Awareness on the topics?
Would anyone like to speak up, whoever asked that question? Okay, we can skip it then.
Sorry, that was my question. Is I asked that because these are concepts that that I look at in the works that I do, and I try to create that link to coaching. And I believe coaching deals with a change of mindset towards any concept. Not just limited to this 3. So I'm just kind of hoping to be able to define that relationship between coaching, changing the mindset, and driving culture transformation, inclusion, diversity. In fact, I think we've heard all these 3 terms being used so much, we stop wondering what this mean anymore. And I think all these 3 terms mean very different things to different people. Yeah, so people generally know semantically what they mean, but what does it represent in the organization? Because every organization interprets this differently. And I would think that it takes a bit of mindset shift and alignment internally to be able to define this before you can actually drive any transformation in these areas.
Yeah. That's a very good question, and it sounds that Arthur, that you actually spend a bit of time on this topic. Yeah, actually, what resonates with me here is that that coaching as a key to discovering new perspectives. Yeah, and to be able to shift and to reframe from what I know today into something that I'm curious to discover more about. And I mean, we are in an environment where always different cultures kind of come together. And while we are forming our SAP culture, we talk about inclusion a lot, and I think and diversity as well. And we still kind of like it still hits us every day in certain areas. So I guess what I would like to answer here, and it might not be a complete answer, but just also giving a perspective, is that it's at the end of the day, coaching is seen as a key to be more effective in an environment where there are different cultures, and where we also would like to embrace inclusion and diversity. So, and we are on the journey here. Yeah. So maybe coming back to where's your vision and where do you want to go with this? Maybe it's a good point to kind of link the 2 more closely together to see how can we actually foster coaching more to support our agenda in diversity and inclusion. Might be a good thing, but I think for now I would like to just offer that coaching allows to provide a new perspective, and that's where the 2 have a common ground. Yeah.
And just to add to what Elka said, and maybe this is not directly related to coaching, Arthur, but with respect to inclusion, diversity, we are able to measure that via the employee engagement. And there's also a correlation that if our employee engagement is increasing, what is the percentage increase in the top line? How does the company profit based on the employee engagement increase? And we kind of bring that back into the value conversation, then saying, okay, if this is going to impact the organization in a positive way, what can we do, and how can we ensure we increase, say, inclusion in the organization? Because you show success via the metric, saying, with inclusion in the organization, we've seen X percentage increase in so and so. And that brings back to the value conversation, saying, so what else can we do? How else should we be looking at hiring differently? For example, if you're talking about diversity, how else can we grow the talents? What kind of thinking can we bring in the organization or in the teams that could in turn foster a culture of inclusion, which in turn, so it becomes a little bit of a value conversation, and it goes in a circle in terms of value to outcome to then bringing into a coaching conversation. What else can we do? So I think that's how I would look at it.
So it'll be right in saying it's about asking the questions we otherwise might not ask.
Exactly.
Like, why are so many men getting promoted instead of women? Why do we not have this sort of mix of people in our senior management teams?
Yep.
So it's about really challenging the status quo and asking those difficult questions.
Yep.
Okay. Look, brilliant. Thank you very much. Firstly, can I ask everyone to put a big round of applause for Akshita and for Elke? What I'd like to do now is we're going to put a Mentee board up, but whilst we're also putting a Mentee board up, I'd like you to think about the one or two things that you really got out of this session personally, something that really valued you. And I'd like to just pick some people up randomly and just like to ask you to share or stick it in the chat box if that's okay. So the first person I'm seeing straight in front of me is Lynn. Lynn, if you think about what you got out of the session, what did you get out of the session personally for you? She's thinking.
Are you referring to Lynn Wong?
Yes, Lynn Wong.
Yeah.
Sorry, we've got more than one Lynn. You just have to unmute Lynn.
She's mentioned in the chat at the ground up.
Yes, I thought you said to key in the chat.
Pick some people out.
the ground up initiative I thought is very good. Yeah, to start from the ground. And then getting people, getting that mass and then influencing the leaders to do it together. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Desmond.
I think the key one that kind of like reinforced me, because I have attended other community of practice as well. And I think that training part and providing, the signing up with a vendor, I think that somehow stands out to me that, you do really need to, while it's community-based, to get it going, you also need to ensure that the coaches that you are using in the community, they are properly trained and do have certification. If not, the experience might not be as well, which doesn't give you that traction and momentum to build the coaching culture within the organization, I think.
Thank you, Desmond. Mac.
I love the concept of, an organized effort with a vision for the organization on coaching, and the combination and integration of external strength with the vendor and the internal capabilities and a network. The ambassador network was a very key factor. One more thing which I liked about the program is that they are helping those managers to get accredited with ICF coaching. So this is like giving them a lifetime thing to carry with them in terms of education and accreditation. So there is a lot of value in terms of not only day-to-day work here and now, but also for adding value to people's future life. So.
Brilliant comment, Mac. Thank you very much. Damini.
Yeah, I just added my comment in the chat section as well. For me, I think it's how Akshita actually started. She said that, do you see coaching mentioned specifically in any of the things that we've presented to you? And that's the thing, it's not a standalone project in itself. They have managed to embed it in the culture itself. And you can see it throughout the practice, even the way, the diversity and inclusion thing was just, addressed by both LK and Akshita. I think it's very much there. It's how can you challenge the status quo? How can you use coaching as a tool here to continuously raise the right questions that you should be raising? Again, linking it to the future of your how work will look like for you, for your company, for your industry, and for people and communities as a whole. So I think it's the continuous. It's a continuous tool, which is backed by community in itself, that is helping each other out to bring answers to these questions and build that kind of culture. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you very much. So in the chat box, there's a Mentimeter link. If you haven't already seen the Mentimeter link, there's 2 questions that are being asked. Based on what you've learned, what would you like to apply in your organization? Is the first question. And the second question was coming up in a minute.
Do you want me to? Okay, well, people are still putting this in. So let's just wait for a few more responses. Okay, so making coaching accessible at more levels. Yeah, not just for senior leaders. The peer learning approach is very interesting.
I really like this.
Yeah. Offering coaching as a normal thing to enable people to get the best out of them and not as a surprising step. Yeah, which seems to be done only when there's a big problem. So normalizing coaching. Building an ambassador network, fostering the coaching culture, using coaching to drive learning. Yeah, it's true. So, I mean, just to add on to that point, the thing is people buy into the context. They may not buy into the approach right away. But if the context here is around learning, like what Akshita said right at the start, if you look at all the things that SAP is trying to do, it is not explicitly coaching. They're trying to drive these larger initiatives and large culture in the organization of which coaching is part of.
Offering coaching for all, coaching training, embedding coaching as a key leadership skill. Interestingly enough, I was having a coffee with a very good friend of mine the other day who's a senior leader in SAP, who has gone through all the training. He's one of the coaches, and he really honestly believes that deep down in his heart, he is very passionate about coaching. He sees the value coaching brings to him as a leader and how it helps to develop his team. And that's really what's driving it, is this, he sees the actual benefits of it. And because of it, believes in it wholeheartedly. That to me is powerful.
It's like that's championing, isn't it, Jim? Like you need champions.
So.
All right, shall we move on to the last question?
Last question.
So what kind of support, what would support you in taking this forward? And this question acknowledges that there are definitely challenges in establishing a coaching culture or coaching in the workplace initiatives, which is also part of why we've set up this community of practice. So what will support you? What do you need? And I know Elki and Akshita were quite, they were championing this question because they said, look, we're, right, Elki, like we're coaches, it's a coaching conversation. So we must have sort of that what next and, how are you going to implement what you're taking away?
So it's the now what question. Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. What if your leaders don't fully embrace coaching? What approach would you suggest, or how would you advise they go about sort of trying to get those leaders on board? Coaching training.
I think, Jim, just to give you my thoughts, depends on the type of leader you're dealing with, right? I mean, if the dealer is left brain and is looking for an ROI, then of course we will have to get some case studies, maybe from ICF or others, and who have done successfully, and put a ROI numbers plan, how this can really change the dynamics. And if not, what is the lost opportunity, lost cost, right, or productivity? If the leader is about branding, because money is not the issue, then it is about their the external perception, organization, your best employer, whatever. I mean, it's how this organization will be branded, viewed. And the third aspect is the culture. So, I mean, this is a good thing, right? Coaching can really enhance many buckets. So it is about value-based presentation based on the leadership appetite is what I think.
Okay, Akshita, do you have anything to add to that, to what Max just shared?
Yes, I would like to respond to that saying, yes, fully agree, but it's a lot that you're asking for. Yeah. And
Thank you.
I mean, I would say that, I mean, at the end, it's one step at a time. And it is like when you said that we are looking for the senior leadership, the sponsorship is like, who is this person who can provide you support? And then I think it's also, what is it that he needs so that he can truly provide you support and also represent that in front of others? Is it really the ROI study that he requires, or maybe it's something else? So I think also here it's a matter of trust on an individual level to grow this, to seed and to grow a very little plant into something that step by step grows bigger.
There's a comment here on the platform from a text perspective. I mean, do you have any comments or any thoughts on that you'd like to share? How do you make it accessible for both coaches and coachees?
Sorry, Jim, are you asking, who are you asking?
Elke and Akshita.
Which
comment
comment is,
says,
yeah.
Support going forward, understanding how easy it is to set up the coach matching platform from a tech perspective. How do you make it accessible for both coaches and coachees?
I think, go ahead.
I mean, I was just going to respond to this to say, well, we, as a tech company, of course, we have software who does that. Yeah. So, and we have a tool who allows the matching to happen.
But I can just add to that is that the more complex, the more larger the organization, the more complex it gets. So I'm sure, the smaller the organization, it's easier to get the approvals. Yes, success factors, Laura. So it's something that would not be super simple, but I think it helps that we have what you call the tool ourselves. SAP has a platform ourselves, so that definitely makes it a go. But having said that, I would not put the tool as a showstopper, because I don't think we had this sophisticated tool when we started. I remember the older tool that we had for peer learning was very basic, and it wasn't a great UI. I mean, if I may say so at that point of time, but don't quote me on that again. But I don't think it was a tool that made it successful. I think it was in the interest and the passion that people wanted to make it happen, kind of pushed for the need for making it happen. So that was not the first thing that was in the radar. The tool wasn't the main focus in the beginning.
Thanks. I like that comment here. If a leader don't buy, then he's not a leader.
Thanks, Wahid.
Yes.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our very first Coaching in the Workplace COP. Really do appreciate, firstly, big round of applause to Akshita and to Elke from SAP. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, your experiences with everyone. That was incredibly valuable.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Really do appreciate it. Lynn, I think we have one last thing for people. We want to launch a survey, just asked to get them. Okay. In the chat box, there's a link to a little survey. We're hoping to build this community. As I said, it's something that we'd like to be led by people like you. So can you help us to complete the survey, which really sort of gives us a better understanding of what you need going forward from a community so that we can hope to build it, and sort of what sort of role you would like to play in this community as well?
Yeah. So do take some time. It's a very short survey. It'll help us understand your needs better. And moving forward, we will make the recording available. And I believe we've also, Jim, we've set up a LinkedIn closed group.
There's a LinkedIn closed group, so we'll invite everyone to the LinkedIn closed group as well.
Yeah, so look out for an email from us, either Collective Change Institute or Jim.
Or Jim, yeah.
We'll decide who's sending that out, but it'll be the both of us. So look out for an email. We would have the LinkedIn link in there. We'll also have the survey link. So we look forward to hearing from all of you so that we can continue this conversation and really help support and help you guys see through this initiative that you are in the midst of setting up, or that you're trying to set up in your organization. We know it's not easy, definitely anything culture-based. So we're here to support you guys. So we would like to, Jim, is there anything else before we end the session officially?
No, I love the sharing, Aksheta, Elka. I really love the way that you guys have embedded it in the organization. It's not a silo. It works across the organization. I think that's the mistake a lot of people make, is they build it as a silo. And if it's a silo, it generally fails from what I've seen. So I'm really loving the way that you've approached it. Well done. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a journey and it's quite long, Jim. But yes.
It's been quite a few years.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you for your generosity so much, Elki and Akshita. Thank you so much. For those of you who have joined, thank you for lending your presence. I hope you're walking away with something. And if you have any other questions, Jim and I can stay back for a while. Otherwise, we'll see you guys soon. Please have a good week ahead.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
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 Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Desmond.
Bye.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh, thanks,
Bye.
Sharifa.
Thanks, Sharifa.
Bye.
Thank you.